Hello and welcome to the first ever Top Gear meeting of great minds. I've got next to me four of the biggest and most influential people in the car industry, the performance car industry, certainly. Thank you for coming, gentlemen. To start with, I thought we'd begin with that really awkward moment in meetings when you go around and you introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about yourself. So I'll go first, if that's right. So I'm Jack Ricks, editor of Top Gear magazine. I've been writing about cars and presenting videos about cars for just over 15 years now. John?
John Hennessey from Houston, Texas. We make fast cars go faster, fast cars and trucks. We also build the Venom F5. So Hope's my wife, got 5 kids all in the business, and just glad to be here with you guys.
Cool.
Mate Rimac, founder and CEO of Bugatti Rimac and founder of Rimac and now CEO of Bugatti Rimac. I'm still in my first job, still doing the first job, and sitting among many of my heroes today, so thanks a lot for the invitation.
And do you want to remind us how old you are?
34.
I can't believe I'm not the youngest person here.
Imagine how that makes me feel.
Sorry, Gordon.
Gordon Murray, chairman of the Gordon Murray Group, and I've been in sort of racing and performance cars for 55 years. And I've only had 3 jobs. So I had 17 years running and designing Brabhams and the Brabham Formula One team, a short stint of 3 years in McLaren at Formula One, and then started McLaren Automotive and had about 15, 17 years of that. 15 years ago, started our own business at Gordon Murray Group. So I've had a fantastic life, really. I've just been paid pretty well to do my hobby all my life, and I'm still enjoying it just as much now as I did way back in the 60s. And once again, it's great fun to be with 3 great people from the motoring industry, these guys, so it should be a good evening.
Yeah, Christian von Koenigsegg from Sweden. Dreamt about building cars since I can remember, probably around 5-6 years old, since the dream came alive, and I really wanted to do nothing else in life. So when I was 19, I started my first company because I realized I probably need to make some money so I can afford to build cars because it's probably expensive. And amazingly, that little trading company, the idea was buy something for X, sell it for Y, and hopefully make a profit in between. It ended up being plastic bags, pens, frozen chicken, whatever. 3 years later, I had a little company with 3 employees, and I said to myself, what was it I wanted to do again? It was building cars. And I've proven to myself I can make a business, so now I'll start. And then I was 22 years old, that was 1994. It took me a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to deliver the first car to a customer in 2002. And I just kept on going ever since, I guess. And here we are today. And really, I'm flattered and honored to be with these gentlemen here today. So.
Wow, that wasn't awkward at all. This is the best meeting I've ever been to. So the rules, just a word on the rules. There are no rules, really. We want this to just be an open debate. Ideally, I want the 4 of you talking to each other and swapping opinions and ideas, and I'll just fade quietly into the background and disappear. In terms of the format, you'll notice this beautiful object we have over here. This is the golden tombola of topics. So the idea is, one by one, you'll come up, we'll give it a spin, choose a ping pong ball with a number on it, and that number corresponds to one of the topics that I've got written down here on my phone. And simple as that, really. And off we go. We'll start the discussion. So, do you want to go first, John? Is your closest?
You bet.
There we go. Right.
All right.
Let's hope the door doesn't fall off the first time I do this. There we go.
Is this like Top Gear roulette?
It is. I've given it a spin before, everyone. Number 3.
Number 3.
Right. You can hold on to that ball. Number 3. So, can an EV ever be more exciting to drive than a combustion engine car? And if so, how do we get there? Oh, Mate's itching to take this one. Who wants to go first? Yeah.
I think in a straight line it can.
I think in a straight line, yeah. I've got a Tesla Plaid, and I know your car's faster than the Plaid, so yeah, I think that EV, for me, again, I own one. We're kind of evaluating that segment of the market. I think that weight and battery technology and fast charging and charging networks, and there's a lot left to come. I think EVs, maybe you go to Circuit of the Americas, and depends on the vehicle, but you have to have better brakes because of all the weight. But I think there's certainly a fun factor there, but I don't think it's still early because I don't think it's checked the boxes that traditional sports cars, hypercars have so far. Again, you're going to drill everybody in the drag race, but if we go to the Nordschleife, it might be a little different story.
Personally, I think it's a timeline thing. It's a generational thing and a timeline thing. I think at the moment the answer is absolutely categorically an electric car can't give you all the emotional stuff. Somebody my age, or even somebody down to maybe 30, 25, 30, it'll never give you the emotional experience of a lightweight dynamic motor car with the noise and the pickup speed and all the rest of it. However, there will be a time when people of a certain age are not here anymore and other people don't remember that stuff. So I think it's just a timeline thing. It's the same as...
It's our job to make sure that they do remember.
You know, right now, we've got probably a generation of young people that have never driven a rear-wheel drive car, for example. And as we know, as enthusiasts, it's a completely different experience from driving a front-wheel drive car. And I think it's the same with electric cars. They will become the norm, and then relatively speaking, absolutely, people that build sporty ones and quick ones and ones that handle, that will be above the normal everyday family electric car. So it's just a timeline. It's not, you can't sort of just draw a line now and say that's it, you know, it'll change.
My 16-year-old son, he grew up in the backseat of a Tesla. I mean, he really enjoys it and enjoyed it. And I'm very much a spokesperson for electric cars, and I'm involved in it myself, of course. But he is a fan of like JDM cars, Japanese cars from the 80s, and he knows kind of the engine block numbers on I don't know, Toyota Straight Six and the difference in details, like a true car nut. And I said, aren't you supposed to just be interested in like self-driving cars? Like, no, it's so boring. It's this and that, and you can tweak it and tune it in the sound and the vibration. Listen to that. So it's interesting. He didn't grow up with that, and he's still totally into it. And that gives me kind of a sense. We're not looking at this kind of steam engine being replaced by the combustion engine, meaning combustion engines being replaced by electrical motors. And I think that the difference here is power to weight and what kind of fuel you can run in the future. If you can run on a CO2 negative fuel, which is possible to create, where you have amazing emission control, there is no like environmental detriment, and actually the more you drive, the less CO2 there is there because you pay kind of an environmental tax when you produce the fuel. Why not? But having said all of that, most likely an electric car will be lighter than a combustion engine car in 10 years. But will it be more fun and more emotional? We will see. And of course, you can mix and match. So I think the future is super interesting, and we don't really know what's out there yet.
Let's hear from the expert.
Exactly. Well, you know, I'm also a petrol head. You know, my dream garage consists of mostly 99% of combustion engine cars, you know. And I agree with you totally. Like, you know, also future Bugattis will still have a combustion engine. I think it's a really important part. And I think especially Europe is shooting itself in the foot, saying there shouldn't be any combustion engine cars anymore. And that's kind of changing now with the new legislation proposals. But, you know, we in Europe, we are basically, with very few exceptions outside of Europe, the hypercar industry of the world, and exporting these interesting products around the world that don't really move the needle in terms of emissions. So yes, all the cars, like normal cars, should be electric on the road. And there will be exciting cars on the road that are electric, but I think the combustion engine should remain there for enthusiasts. Like, you don't want to hear a diesel, you know, Golf nagging on the street. You want that to be silent, but to hear a V12 or something else, you know, naturally aspirated engine on the road, I think that should still happen in the decades to come. For me personally, like, you know, I'm my biggest self-critic, and if something's wrong with the electric car or with our cars, whatever, I'm the first one to tell you that. But actually driving the Nevera, and you unfortunately didn't have the experience yet, it kind of ruins everything else for you. Like, everything else feels really slow after that. And it's not just straight line performance. You know, with 4 motors, things you can do in corners with torque vectoring, drifting, control drifting, you know, 4-wheel drifting, you know, that kind of stuff. It's just really totally different level. Yes, it's heavy. It will get a lot lighter. I think we can do a lot to make the cars lighter. And yes, there's lack of emotions in terms of noise, but there's so much other stuff that makes up for it. So who are our customers? You know, a typical Bugatti customer has dozens of cars, and so will your customer, and all of our customers have dozens of cars. So they have a bunch of V12s, they have V10s, you know, and this is so much different and gives them a different experience. So I guess there's space for both, and I personally really hope that the combustion engine will still be allowed to be around, because it's just such a beautiful piece of machinery coming out of the ingenuity of humanity, basically. It's
Right.
Yeah, so it shouldn't go away.
And I guess in this age of sort of cell shortage for your normal car, it's not ideal to package a lot of cells in a car that's not used as a daily driver. If you can have fewer cells, renewable fuel, your daily driver is fully electric, that makes more sense and is better for the environment. And also if these kind of cars can push the development of new sustainable fuels, it also means that can spill off to the existing car fleet and make that much cleaner than it is today. So I think the world has gone a little bit from being like, oh, electric car will never happen, like 7 or 8 years ago, Elon Musk is crazy, to there's nothing else.
Yeah.
And of course, the truth is not as simple as any either of those two. So there seemed to be some sobering up. And I think also the ban of the combustion engine is usually misunderstood for the ban of fossil fuel, which is a good thing to ban. But the combustion engine can run on many different things than fossil fuel. So, yeah, whatever.
Maybe also a bit of encouragement for the enthusiasts here. At least I don't see any legislation that will stop us from making combustion engine supercars or hypercars in limited volumes beyond 2035. So 15 years from today, I don't see any legislation right now that will prevent us from doing that. So it's still like in the foreseeable time, there will be very exciting combustion engines.
Logic should prevail.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It doesn't always, but sometimes it does.
Hopefully.
Hopefully the market gets to determine. You know, hopefully the enthusiasts like ourselves, and it's not just all of our clients that can afford multi-million-dollar cars, but it's for like our kids and our grandkids to be able to start off with an entry-level BMW, even though you blew up your engine, you know, putting the electric motor in there created your whole business. But I just feel like that we all probably have a story about like that first internal combustion car that we connected with. And now, again, with your son growing up riding around a Tesla as your daily, you know, he's all into JDM. That's cool. So I don't see that going away. Hopefully not.
All right, I think we covered that. Mate?
Yep, absolutely.
Right, come on. Let's
Drum roll.
drum roll. Pick your ball.
5.
Number 5.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Okay, so what is the future of top speed and performance figures? Does anyone want or need to go faster than 300 miles an hour? And what will be the true measure of performance in the future?
Well, nobody needs to go 400, 500 kilometers per hour, 300 miles per hour. Nobody needs a hypercar, right? But I think life is not only about problems we need to solve and to survive. Because, you know, I hate when people say Elon Musk is trying to fly a rocket to Mars. There's so many people who are, you know, sick and poor and hungry in the world. Well, if you apply that to everything, you have, nobody of us should have any pleasure in life, right? You should dedicate everything, all of us, you know, you should have one pair of shoes, one pair of pants. You know, you shouldn't watch TV. You shouldn't do anything that's beyond survival. And it's the same with what we are doing here. I think, you know, when we have, for example, Supercar Owner Circle going through Zagreb and through Croatia, where there's, you know, 50 hypercars coming to the city stops. There's tens of thousands of people on the road, little kids, you know, touching these cars, taking photos, you know, sitting into the car, being inspired by it. Which other product in the world can do that? What else can you put in front of people to cause that fascination? And I always say, like, cars are the accumulation of human ingenuity and knowledge. You have everything there. Material sciences, fluid dynamics, simulations, electronics, software, everything is in there. Plus, it's a piece of art. We truly care about every detail. I know that Gordon cares about every holder of the car, that it does multiple purposes. Christian cares that every piece of the car is beautiful. The suspension needs to be beautiful. The engine needs to be beautiful. And one of the elements is also speed. So with performance, we are lifting the bar higher and higher and showing what's possible. And it's an interesting competition that has been going on, since Gordon's F1. I think that was one of the most famous records that has been broken. And then for the last 20 years, the rivalry between Koenigsegg and Bugatti, and also Hennessey. And we are now at the point, close to 500 kilometers per hour. I think that both Koenigsegg and Bugatti said they will never do a car that's faster than the current ones.
I think so, yeah.
But I'm not sure if we're going to hold our word on it.
We'd like to announce today, based on today, we're going to go bigger. No.
Yeah.
Let's see.
No, I mean, I think you're onto something. I say to me, what is the biggest contribution Koenigsegg is giving to society? I mean, we're supplying very few expensive cars to the wealthy car enthusiast. So, of course, we kind of try to motivate, but we invent and create interesting technology and trickle down and this and that. But I think it's just that showing you can live your dream, showing that stuff out of the ordinary are possible, kind of lifting the spirits and making people believe the world is a bit more interesting than what they just see in front of themselves. I think that's the biggest contribution. And I think that is absolutely super important for society to aspire to things that is possible. And it's, of course, it's not always just fun and easy, but that is part of what makes it exciting, and also what people are willing to strive for when they want to fulfill their dreams. So it's just, we're living examples of...
I think we're all living our dream, right, to some degree. I mean, within our businesses and our creations. And I think that, I'm sure each one of you guys, I hear it on a regular basis, the inspiration that we give to others, primarily young people, but not always just young people. And I remember I was standing on the side of a test track watching an F1 go by at 220 plus miles per hour with Mario Andretti 30 years ago in West Texas. And again, that's one of my inspirations. So I mean, again, maybe whatever I do or one of your guys' cars goes out and sets some sort of speed record, whether it's 300 or 500K or world's fastest EV. Again, I think that there's more to it for us, more to it for me and our family and our business than just selling cars and growing our business. I feel like that we touch lives in a certain way. And I think kind of like NASA back when Kenny said we're going to go to the moon, and then, again, we go to the moon and step foot on the moon, and that, like, when I'm a kid, like, I want to be an astronaut. Now that didn't work out, but now I'm building fast cars. So
Well, there's still time, John.
So back to your original question, I think that, performance validation is always important. People always look at the numbers, but ultimately, like when I'm driving a car, when our clients are driving a car, the feedback I get is more about the sensation, the experience. Nobody's putting their V-Box in their window to see, did I crack a 1.890 to 60 this time around? Maybe they do, but I feel like, but again, that's something that, the Top Gear viewers want to see something. For our business, I always want to climb a higher mountain. If we achieve some sort of a speed record, like we go 270, you go 285 or whatever, and you guys,
But how far are we going to go? How far?
I don't know.
Well, I think, there is a price to pay for top speed in the sense of everything else the car is supposed to do. You have to bleed off your downforce, you have to have certain tire technology, suspension technology, gear ratios, it add weights, unless, if you want to have it all, it add weights, and if you don't want to have it all, it's a compromise. So, given what the road system looks like, it doesn't make sense to go any faster or even that fast. It's just as simple as that. And of course, if you want to go faster, you can go out to the Salt Lakes with a rocket car. That's much faster anyway. So, but if you want to do it with a road car, it's reached this point for the foreseeable future, I would say, unless the road system changed completely.
Yeah, I agree with these guys, and particularly what you said, Mate. But you need to be inspirational if you're in this sort of business. It's not all motor cars. It could be, as you say, landing on the moon. But we do need those things to push people and make people look up to things and be excited. Definitely. Having said that, I can honestly put my hand on my heart and say when I did the McLaren F1, I had no performance targets in mind. It just happened to go fast. I didn't set out to do. The only reason I calculated the top speed was to choose the gear ratios, basically. It just happened to do 240 miles an hour, which I think is still an NA record for a race car.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's not. I think it's absolutely valid to have targets like that, whether they're lap times or top speeds or 0 to 100 miles an hour, because it is inspirational. In our particular company, we don't focus on that at all. We focus on just the driving. That's why our slogan is driving perfection. If anybody thinks, you know, a 1,000-kilo car with 650 horsepower isn't going to feel fast, you don't have to measure it. It's going to feel quick. Our focus, we're all different, but our focus is entirely on the driving experience. And as Christian said, you have to, when you have targets, you have to think about those targets and you make small compromises, you know, whether it's acceleration or traction or a lap time is the worst one. Trying to do a fast lap, you know, you compromise so much in the motor car. But for some people, that's aspirational, and fine. If it suits them, I think it has a place, but it's just not us.
Okay, on that note, Gordon, shall we switch it up? Here we go. Oh, hang on, I can give it a mix.
Yeah.
There we go. Right.
What have we got? 4.
Number 4. Okay, let me figure this out. Okay, interesting. How important is failure?
I think it's fantastically important. As a designer...
What's been your biggest failure?
I've got plenty of those, plenty of those. But I think generally, if you talk about failure generically, it's really important. As a designer and an engineer, in fact, not just motor cars again, just, you know, well, I've designed a lot more than motor cars, but you learn so much more from your mistakes than you do from doing things correctly. And once again, when you do things correctly, you very seldom get a pat on the back from anybody. You know, sure, if you do a whole motor car correctly, everybody goes, yeah, that's good. But it's individual parts of the design. You know, when you do something really well, you can pat yourself on the back, go, well, I've made that work that much better or that much lighter or whatever. But it's the mistakes you really learn from. You know, and I'm not just talking about the design in business and how you manage people, for example. And I've probably learned, I mean, I've been managing businesses since 1974, and I was running a Formula One team when I was 27. And I've learned so much about people management and business, as well as design and engineering. But I've had lots of mistakes.
Is there one that sticks out? I remember you telling me you chopped up the BT46.
Yeah, that's probably the worst mistake in Formula One was we built, it was the Swedish Grand Prix in '78, and
right.
We had just got the fan not to explode with 5 days to go. By casting the blades in magnesium. They'd been composite blades up until then. And we'd finished 2 fan cars, and we had a third monocoque and all the parts complete, but the car wasn't assembled. So I said to the guys, just chuck it in the back of the truck. We changed the fans with like 1 day before we set out for Sweden. And I said, just chuck all the bits for the third car in the back in case we have an accident and we can build up a third car. And you know the story, we won the race, and the CSI came and sealed the car, and they came back and measured it, said it was legal. But then the other manufacturers talked Bernie into withdrawing the car. And I was so upset about the car being withdrawn. I agreed because it was for the good of Formula One, and Bernie was just starting to get powerful in controlling the Constructors Association. And Chapman basically said, if you don't withdraw the car, they said we could race it till the end of the year. If you don't withdraw the car, that's the end of the Constructors Association. And Bernie came to me and said, you know, please, can we withdraw the car? And you know what my answer was. We could have won the champ. Every race we finished, we would have won by half a minute or something. We were 2 seconds a lap quicker. And I was so upset that we did withdraw the car. And about a week later, the mechanics in the workshop came to me and said, we've got this third car in the corner of the workshop, and it's taking up space. What are we going to do with it? And I said, take it outside and chop it up. Wow. So, thinking back, I probably shouldn't have, you know.
It's going to be a treasure hunt now.
Heat of the moment sort of action.
I think, from my side, life is full of mistakes, and have a very simple philosophy. If you manage to do 2 out of 3 right, you have a chance to go forward. So I would say 33% wrong most of the time. I would say the question was, what's your biggest failure or something like that. So maybe the biggest that I can think of in my company or time as a man doing this is when our factory burned down. It was not a failure we had any kind of control over, but it was a failure to the company. It burned down. And I remember saying to myself, it's good that we're used to fighting hard to make this business run, because otherwise having the factory burned down would probably be a huge headache if you're not used to fighting for your life to get your job done. And of course we managed to save most of the components and equipment in the factory when it happened. And we got shelter a couple of days later, and 2 weeks later we stood at the Geneva Motor Show and sold the car again, with everyone knowing the factory burnt down. So it wasn't really a failure which we had control over, but we dealt with it, I think, well, because we were used to fighting against the odds and also fighting against a lot of rookie mistakes we did back in the days. So,
I could talk all night about failure. I got a PhD in failure. Several things come to mind. Failure is not final. The only real failure would be to give up. I feel like all of us here have had some success with our cars and careers, but there have probably been many inflection points when, I know for me personally, where I'm like, man, is this really a good idea? Should I really keep going with this? But I would have totally failed if I would have quit, but we kept on going. You know, so failure is not final. And I feel like with failure is an opportunity to learn. Now, I'm probably my own worst critic, and I'm certainly probably some of my biggest failure in the last 31 years of being in the automotive business has probably been as a leader and as a boss. And I probably had some really good, talented people at one point that I didn't really know how to coach them, love them, lead them properly. So that's probably been my biggest failure. But it wasn't final, you know? And I think as I kind of was able to adapt and evolve and become more self-aware, that's helped us be able to grow a better team, retain better people, and ultimately make a better product. And we all fail, but I think again and the other thing, big thing for me is like failures, like in a competition or a race or whatever. Those are moments in time for me where I was like, you can either cry about it, continue to get your ass kicked, or get better. And so failure for me is probably one of the biggest motivators I've had, not just in automotive, but in life in general.
Okay. Mate?
Where do I start? I don't know. Like when I started out, you know, I didn't know one person in the auto industry. I didn't know an engineer. I didn't know, anybody working for a car company. Nothing. You know, I converted a 1984 BMW 3 Series into an electric car, and doing that in Croatia, that is least developed, one of the least developed countries in Europe, coming like industry in general, but especially auto industry. And the odds of us being here today are so slim. I mean, Christian visited us when we were just starting. We were maybe 5-6 employees, had the first car when he was going to Croatia to vacation. And sometimes when I do like lectures in universities or something like that, I search for old pictures to put in the presentation, and then some people would maybe think I would be nostalgic. Oh, look, 5 or 10 years ago. And I'm just always thinking, wow, what I had to do at that time to keep going and to survive and to pay the next salary. It was such a struggle. Like, I don't look back at these times with happy memories. I'm just like, oh, Jesus, thanks God that's behind me. We had so many crossroads where we almost died. Like, there's so many things coming into my head, like, from very public things, like, when Richard Hammond crashed the car, and we were on the brink of bankruptcy anyways. We should have been bankrupt at that time, and then that happened. And I was like, okay, that's it now. Or, investors misleading us and we running out of money many times and stuff like that, to technical failures. But maybe one thing that I would do differently, if I could tell one thing to myself that time, and what I want to do differently now, is like, things change so many times in life. Like Christian said, like you want to do 10 things, and at half of them you will fail in one way or another. And it's not because of bad intent or something, but if you are too public about your plan, and then you don't do exactly what you said, but maybe you do something else, and this one you don't do or whatever, there's, maybe public scrutiny about that. Why didn't you do this? You said you will do that. So I kind of now don't want to show what we're doing too early. Rather, get very far when we are very sure we can do something and we can deliver it and then show it, rather than showing too early. And we saw that now also. I mean, Nevada, we showed the car in 2018 in Geneva, and we started to ship it recently to customers. So that's like a long time. And we saw that also with others, with the Valkyrie, with the AMG Project One, and these projects are complicated. And of course, you set yourselves very difficult targets to yourself and to your team, because if you don't, the project can drag on forever. And we all, I guess, felt that. So I would just, in the future, be more careful about, communicating plans that are not 100% bulletproof.
Apart from with us, you can just tell us all your
Yeah,
plans
exactly.
years
You'll
in
tell
advance.
nobody.
I won't tell anyone.
But you have to watch out with that strategy, because it makes it quite comfortable. So you might drag out longer when there is not the public pressure.
Yes,
There's something to Cortez burning the ships, as far as, at least internally. We try to make it clear to our team as far as this is where we're going and what we're doing. And clearly you're here because you never gave up, even though you've kind of gone through a lot of adversity. So I think there's a lot of, when we're in the heat of battle and getting our butts kicked, that was like, do I really want to keep doing this? But again, in the long run, I feel like not giving up is the best way to saying I didn't fail.
Sometimes it's masochism. I think like you keep going despite everybody hitting you, but often you are all in and there's no turning back. And luckily, we are here.
I think 20 years in Formula One teaches you a lot about failure too.
gosh.
Because you're there, you cannot miss a Grand Prix because you're out of the season. So you're fundamentally at war every 2 weeks, and you're back at base for 6 or 7 days to make 30, 40 changes to the car, and it's just relentless. And when Bernie Eccleston was my partner for 14 years at Brabham, and he is, like me, ultra competitive. I mean, I'm just terribly competitive in anything. And second place is failure in Formula One. Nobody's happy with second place. And that's, I suppose, helped me in the future with the car companies, because you do learn that it's first or nothing.
I like to say, I like to win, but I really hate to lose. Really hate to lose.
But that's really cool that you get measured, like every second weekend.
Absolutely, you are measured.
measured.
Whether you like it or not, you are measured every 2 weeks.
In front of the
You
whole
know
world.
exactly where you are.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
But it's funny psychologically, because the famous year in '88 where the MP44, we won 15 out of 16 races. And the company, I used to go down after every single Grand Prix, down right through the factory, through the machine shop, through the fabrication shop, and chat to everybody. And I knew everybody's, in those days it wasn't a big team, so I knew everybody's, wives, their pets, where they went on holiday. And I used to go down every morning and talk to the entire shop floor. And after that race in Monza that we lost, people were totally shell-shocked. It was just, they got so used to success.
It was time to lose.
It was. And you know what? I told everybody it was really exactly that. I said it was really good to lose that one race because it's a reality check. Yeah. We got so used to winning every race. Yeah.
All right, Christian von Koenigsegg, come on down.
There are no duplicates.
Let's pick it. No duplicates. We hand wrote these. What have you
My
got?
birthday, 2nd of July.
All right. Happy 50th, buddy.
You're going to get
thank
a
you.
flood of birthday cards now from the Top Gear faithful.
Yeah, well.
All right, number 2. Oh, interesting. Elon Musk. What are your thoughts on the man? Is he a good or a bad thing for the car industry?
Well, I would say rather maybe, is he good or bad for the planet, perhaps?
There we
I mean,
go.
he's otherworldly in many ways, I would say. I mean, what that man has managed to achieve is... I mean, if you made it up as a story, no one would believe it, I would say. That's number one, right? I remember kind of him getting on my radar when he sold PayPal and he said, I'm going to build rockets. I can relate to that somehow. It's just maybe that's, I mean, if I wouldn't build cars, rockets seems like an interesting thing. It's something I cannot do from my potato field in Ängelholm with no resources. But if I had sold PayPal, maybe that would be a cool thing to do. So that was interesting. And then a few years later, I'm going to build cars. Aha. Okay, right. So yeah, I followed him a bit, of course. I mean, if anyone proves you can do anything and multiply it kind of next to each other simultaneously, it's Elon, right? And of course, he's a character. He's a human being. I mean, what he did to the car industry, he just shook it up completely. He also started, he started a little bit later than I did. Actually, 2007 or 2008, Koenigsegg was a bigger company than Tesla, which is kind of, what did we do since then, comparatively? But he started out when you were not allowed to start in the car industry. It was not an allowing industry. It's not that it's super allowing now, but now it's kind of a thing to see startups. When I started in 1994, people were laughing in my face and said the supercar is dead and this and that. But of course, he did that on a completely different level against the whole automotive industry with an electric car that no one asked for. And as I said to maybe during this talk or before that, a few years ago, people said there is no electric car, it's never going to happen. Now it's the only thing. And without Elon and Tesla, that would never happen. I think that's a good thing for the planet and for us, and not only for the automotive industry. And it might be cool that we one day can go to Mars as well, I guess.
No, he is. I've met him a couple of times, and we actually, one of the meetings was about potentially working together a few years back. And he is an incredibly driven, he's probably the most driven guy I think I've ever met. And that says something, because I'm a bit single-minded at times.
Oh, he had a F1, right?
Yeah,
yes, he did. He had an
Right,
F1. That's right, yeah. But yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, the clever thing for me, or the brave thing rather than clever for me, was there weren't startups in those days in high volume car manufacturing. And then to be a startup with a brand new powertrain,
No infrastructure.
Yeah, so whatever you think of what he's doing, you have to admire the man.
Yeah, sure. Mate?
Yeah, I also met Elon a couple of times, and I guess that, probably we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, because he proved the model of startups in the auto industry. Well, I started a company before he took over Tesla, so I still remember Martin Eberhard and all that. I was following it from day one, and when Tesla stocks were like, $20 flat for a very long time. And he gets lots of heat and criticism, especially from also sometimes very silly things, that he's just an investor, that other people are doing all the work and so on. But I know how car companies work, also big ones, as we are working with many of them, behind the scenes. And, the one thing that's different in Tesla than everybody else is Elon. Just Elon and what he is doing and how he's running the business and the bold visions and also then execution. I went into a lot of detail with him. He understands. What's unique about Elon, he has this big global picture, humanity, planetary level picture, making life multiplanetary, but can also drill very much into the details like very few other people. And knowing what's going on behind the scenes of the auto industry, I would, bet everything I have that it wouldn't be happening right now if it wasn't for Elon and for Tesla. What everybody's doing now is a pure consequence of Tesla, nothing else. So this is full electrification. And in the last few years, it has really changed. In like 5-6 years ago, it was still like, they have bad panel gaps. They don't make good cars.
They still have bad panel gaps.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But that's like, all the big car companies, they were making, ridiculing Tesla and looking from above. And
it was a winning trick to fool them. They were not serious.
Yeah, exactly.
So everyone waited
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. They were fooling. And nobody was believing it's a serious thing. And then now everybody's chasing after Tesla. Everybody. And they are really all in. And all the big companies are really going into electrification. And I know for a fact it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for Elon Musk and Tesla. And then so many other things that are inspirational, like, reusable rockets, flying to Mars, all of that stuff. And there's a long way to go. And of course, as Christian said, he's a human. He makes mistakes. He might have also many times, announced things that didn't happen or happened too late, announcing every year there will be self-driving cars for 5 years next year, But, he has done a huge amount of work and has accomplished lots of things and really changed the industry completely.
The more he fails, the more he succeeds.
Yeah, exactly.
I love his courage, and I'm proud that he's a fellow Texan now.
I was going to say,
Just lives up the road in Austin.
Yeah.
Met him at Geneva many years ago, asked him a question, and he gave me an answer that was way over my head. But again, you know, just like what all you guys said, I mean, you know, would the OEMs and the governments in the world now be saying we're going, you know, full EV or whatever if it wasn't for this guy getting the ball rolling and having kind of that inflection point, you know? And I think, again, we could go back and forth as far as the virtues of electrification, but one of the things I think is most interesting is just the from a design standpoint, you have this whole new architecture where you don't have this lump of engine and driveline in the middle of the car that all of a sudden you can do some really cool things. So again, whether it's Tesla, SpaceX, now Twitter, you know, I love that he's a free speech, libertarian kind of guy. Again, you know, he's human and, you know, he fails like we all fail. And when he fails, it's pretty, you know, it's obviously it's in the public eye, but just think of just the value, the jobs that he's created, the technology that he's created, all the other OEMs trying to play catch up with them. And again, I'm joking, I've got a Tesla Plaid and it's got crappy panel gaps, but the technology really works and it's fast and the charging network really works well. So I just, as an entrepreneur, I have huge admiration for this guy is like, he's the king of the double down. Like, you know, you have to literally bury the guy in a hole or something to stop him from doing whatever he's trying to do. You don't know how he's going to get there. And he may not know how he's going to get there, but
and you know, people criticizing him and also accusing him now to do whatever Twitter just to make money and so on. He's so much beyond that point that people don't realize he's worth billions and billions, hundreds of billions, and people look from their perspective. And, you know, 99% of the people would long time ago, you know, throw in the towel, I made it, you know, enjoy their life. He is crushing himself to move forward on all these fronts and exposing himself to hatred of so many people and to public criticism, while he, selfishly, doesn't need anything. So I think that's also very admirable that despite, you know, he can do anything he wants in the world, but he is committing his life and working day and night to push the world forward.
He's authentic about what he's doing. I think he's kind of the same guy, has integrity, whether you like it or not.
I think this is probably the right moment for me to introduce our special guest today, which is Elon Musk. Sorry, he was washing his hair today. Couldn't make it. All right, I think we got time for one more topic. I'm jealous. I want to pick one myself.
All right.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, I haven't given it a spin. There we go.
I think while you're doing that, just a quick note on just general electrification for cars. We're all kind of advocating the combustion engine and so on, but I think for generally speaking, for all the cars out there on the road for daily transport, it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep the combustion engine, just to make that clear. It's for the kind of this fun weekend warrior kind of thing, or to make the old cars, of course, behave better.
Unless you live in Texas and you got a pickup truck and you want to pull a trailer.
Right, yeah, okay,
well,
fine.
You sort of touched on synthetic fuels or carbon negative fuels. Is that the kind of savior of the combustion engine going forward? Because in the UK, at least, we have these
I would put it like this. It's a good enough excuse, and it will not kill the planet, to have fun with cars. But it will not be better than electrifying the whole car fleet. But you can have both, and you can have maybe a better mix than just electric cars in a way. Because the weekend warrior, why should you have batteries parked in your garage that you have to change after 10, 15 years, even if they're not used? It's better they're out being used in your regular car, and then you run on your expensive, renewable, CO2 negative fuel for the weekend and have more fun in a lighter car with more noise.
Yeah, hopefully there'll always be room for both.
Well, in a few years, aren't we all going to be flying around in our autonomous drone, where we just crawl on the back of our drone and just go to sleep?
That's what I've been told.
That's what I've been told, right?
With your VR goggles on, and you're being somewhere else.
In your living room.
Magazine, yeah.
Great future, guys.
That's the big change we've got coming up.
But maybe a bigger question is actually not just electrification, but ownership. That's another can of worms.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if we want to open
it
that
up?
No, the whole model of how we buy cars, how we use them, how we own them is going to change radically.
If we buy them.
Well, exactly.
But I was saying earlier, let's hope we're logical in the future and allow this. But human beings are not rational. People like to own things. I mean, it would have made sense to borrow cars or ride, hail, share in your community already for 10, 15 years with the computer internet technology we've had with apps and phones. But people like to own things because we are not rational, we're emotional, but sometimes logical.
Okay, well, let's put a pin in that idea that Ooh, cars on the road. Nearly all cars are going to be electric, and we're going to own them in weird and wonderful ways in the future. And come back to my topic, which is, you've got one last tank of fuel on Earth, or one battery of electricity, if you prefer. What car are you putting it in, and where are you going to drive it?
Series 3 Lotus Elan and the Highlands of Scotland.
Probably the quickest answer all day there. You've thought about that one before, haven't you?
Well, it's just, I have been asked that before, actually, and it's still, in my opinion, probably the best handling sports car that's ever been made.
I have the modern version of that. I have my Mazda Miata from when I was 19 years old, and I drive it mostly during the summers, but still drive it every week more or less, and I would put the fuel in that car.
If anybody wants to know what good steering is, just jump in a 60s Elan. I tried to beat it with the F1 and failed. Tried to beat it with the Rocket and failed. So
what is it?
Why?
What's the secret?
Yeah, what's the secret?
What's the secret?
well, it hasn't. If you analyse the geometry, it hasn't got. I mean, I've got very strict parameters around steering geometry on caster trail, pneumatic trail, and all that stuff, anti-dive, and it actually breaks two of my rules.
There's some hidden flex
and yet it still works. It's just the best feedback you can actually ever get in a motor car.
So actually, there's a set of rules, and then there's just some magic dust.
The truth is between the parts, usually.
Yeah. Okay. Christian, you said your car, but you didn't say where you would drive it.
I would drive it on Iceland, just to say something interesting. I drove a Koenigsegg on Iceland once. It was pretty cool. It looks like you're on Mars and you have these kind of spewing geysers and things, and no cars and fun roads.
Fantastic.
For me, probably E30 M3. That was always my dream car, and I got lucky enough to buy one a couple of years ago. It's beautiful. Maybe not that exciting to drive as I was expecting, but it's the most beautiful car for me ever. And I will drive it towards my hometown of Livno in Bosnia, where you have like this amazing road which is still not discovered, and maybe this is not good to say it here because there is nobody there. It's, I think, the best driver's road in the world, and it has like wild horses running around you while you drive there, so it's amazing.
Wow. Didn't it all start with an M3 for you that you converted to electricity?
It was a 1984 323 normal 3 Series that I used to drift with, and the combustion engine blew up, and then I made
the rest
electric.
is history, right?
Yeah, 15 years later.
John?
So I just turned 60 a few weeks ago. My wife and 5 kids bought me a better version of my first car, which was a 1969 Oldsmobile Cutlass 442 convertible. It's an old school muscle car. So driving that car on the Pacific Coast Highway, somewhere between Carmel and Big Sur, and that'd be good. One good tank of gas.
So no hypercars or mega cars.
What
does this mean?
I went back and forth. I wanted to talk about like our latest and greatest, but again, that seems to be the obvious answer. I think we could all kind of talk about what's our favorite car. It's the next car that we're working on,
exactly.
The current one we're working on, right? Exactly. But we've all said that before, so I feel like kind of the theme with like kind of the cars that kind of got us inspired and kind of got us going early. And I was running errands with my wife a couple days ago in my old convertible, and it's just something special about that.
Well, it's interesting what you say there, and this might be a nice kind of point to finish on, is where your inspiration comes from. Because all of these cars you're talking about, they kind of hark back to some hazy days in the past that remind you of good times, right? So it's not all about bleeding edge technology, it's about humans and emotions, and we're flesh and bones after all. So what maybe just a quick answer each on what your personal inspiration is: cars, people, objects, whatever you like.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been the thrill of speed and the emotion of the driving experience, the sound, the vibration, the acceleration, whether it's 0 to 60 in 6 seconds or 0 to 60 in 2 seconds or whatever it might be. But I also feel like as I've gotten older, the friendships, the rivalries, the camaraderie, internally with other brands, manufacturers, the media. It's again, I find a lot of satisfaction in the relationships that kind of have evolved from that initial passion of automotive and wanting to make a little bit of noise in the car world, and so the people.
For me, it's purely technical. Like, I had, with Envera, I had this idea of like 4 electric motors and, battery in the middle and stuff like that. And, it's easy to have the idea, but it takes so much, as Christian said, blood, sweat, and tears of so many people until you realize that. And then you sit in that car and, in the beginning it doesn't work, and then a lot of iterations, you were driving it very early on, and now it's finally finished, and you sit in there, and I look around and I know everything about every part, how it came about, why it's like that, and how it could be a lot better next time. And same with, the next Bugatti now. I had a very clear idea. As soon as we started to talk about Bugatti, I knew exactly what I would like the next Bugatti to be. And 3 years I'm now working on that, and 3 more years and it will be there, hopefully. And that's kind of like, this process of having an initial idea, maybe some interesting technology or some interesting performance that you want to explore, and then going through that journey, and then like you sit here and there's just air around you, and then a few years later you sit around something that's such a complex machine out of carbon fiber and aluminum and titanium and copper, and and it just surrounds you, and you drive it, and it just came out of your head. So that's kind of the fascination for me, and like doing the next thing, like, is it possible? Like, you have this idea in your head, and like maybe somebody would say it's crazy, like somebody would have said maybe 10 years ago that an electric car can have 2,000 horsepower and drift like crazy and go under 2 seconds, 0 to 100, and then you do it, and then it's already like old news for you. And it's like, you want to do the next thing and the next thing.
But do you ever think when people tell you you're crazy that anymore, the older I get, I feel like that's a validation that I'm onto something, right? You're crazy, you shouldn't do that. I'm like, oh, really?
Yes. Yeah. Easy one for me. It's all about the interaction between human and machine, and the feedback and the feel. And that's not just the way the car handles or steers, it's also the sound. In my case, nostalgia with some of the old cars. A good example of that is one of my favorite go-to cars in summer is I've got a 59 Healey Sprite, which is not modified. I haven't put the 1275 in. It's got 43 horsepower. It drives completely on the throttle. You don't need the steering wheel. It oversteers everywhere, and it's just fun. And I lusted after one when I was 17, and my dad would never stretch to a Sprite. So just the whole experience of what the car gives you, and the whole feel of it, is what I get a buzz out of. And up until 78, I drove every one of my Formula One cars, for example. And the feedback, with whether it had the V8 or the V12 or the flat 12, the feedback from the engine and the feedback from the car, just driving a Formula One car, even at 90%, was just such a great experience.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, when I think back as a young boy, I was fascinated by any car, a rusty old beater, it didn't matter. And I started thinking, why was there such a fascination about just any car? I think it's the ultimate tool of freedom. If you take a train or a bus or something else, it takes you somewhere. You can't just suddenly change your mind and go elsewhere. Planes are out of reach for most people, and you can't actually land or take off anywhere. And a motorcycle, you can go far, but it's very weather dependent and so on. And a boat, of course, you can go places, but you're not landlocked, you're waterlocked. So if we stay on land, then for this. But it's the ultimate freedom machine. You can jump in with a very little amount of money, buy something cheap, and go anywhere quickly, and change your mind and go in another direction. So when I look back, I think that was my main fascination. And I had to start a company which made few cars because I had a small company. So they needed to be hand built, and that becomes expensive per piece. So how do I sell them? Well, they need to be very exciting and cool then. So that kind of escalated into this point. It doesn't mean I necessarily were mostly interested in hypercars. It might mean we might build a few more cars going forward in the future when my company has the opportunity to build a few more. But it kind of just quickly went there because that was kind of a mode or survival. But the fascination was that it's the ultimate freedom tool on planet Earth.
Well, gentlemen, that has been an honor. That's been absolutely fascinating. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. The chance to share some of our ideas and inspirations. And just thank you again for coming down and joining in with this. It's been fantastic. Should we get Stig to make us a drink?
Sounds good.
Make it
Stig?
a double.
Right, get the pints in.
What happens when you let the brains behind 3 of the world's fastest hypercars drive each other's?
Well, today, here at Sonoma Raceway, in a world first, we are going to find out. From Sweden, we have Christian von Koenigsegg and the Jesko Attack. From Croatia, Mate Rimac and the all-electric Nevera, plus a spare Bugatti Chiron he happened to have nearby. And from right here in the United States of America, John Hennessey and the F5 Venom. It's a 6,800 horsepower lineup.
Gordon Murray and Horacio Pagani were both invited and both accepted, but unfortunately were unable to make it along today. Gentlemen, you are sorely missed. Next time, hopefully.
Absolutely. So here's how this is going to work. After the CEOs have all done their test drives, we're going to sit down, have a big debrief, and then answer the biggest questions in motoring.
So let's get stuck in. Welcome to Top Gear's boss level.
The first problem was that by the time all 3 cars and the brains behind them arrived at Sonoma, the sun was setting and the bosses wanted to talk each other around their creations in minute detail. So Ollie had to give them the hurry up.
Right, I'm going to have to break this up and get the guys in the cars. So, John into this one.
We did take the safety precaution of putting each company's factory test driver in the passenger seat, just for a little bit of advice on how to control 3 of the world's most powerful street cars.
Oh yeah. She's got some scoot.
So, not hanging about then.
Wow. Power comes on, it comes on. Very impressive. Very neutral balance. Transitions very nicely. Top Gear, Koenigsegg's the real deal. You knew that. Now I know that. Very impressive. My coach here, he kind of turned the traction control off a little bit for me. It's a little intimidating.
Well, you'll be unsurprised to learn that it's triggered every noise meter going as soon as it went out.
Good, that's what it should do, right? Yeah. A car like this should be outrageous. You know, it's raw, but it's actually it's a pretty refined car too. You know, so it kind of has the dual personality, whereas F5 is kind of raw all the time.
Yeah. With Sonoma's noise limit microphones already tingling from the Jesko's backfiring exhaust, Mate made an enthusiastic getaway in the 1,800 horsepower Hennessey.
This thing is raw. This was hard.
Yeah, you see, Mr. Rimac, driving fast and talking to a camera, it's not as easy as it looks.
So here's some tire. Yeah. That might be Mate.
Stretching its legs.
Get it sideways.
That was good. You can feel the engine idling. Wow, that's crazy. I never felt that in a car. It's a monster engine in a go-kart.
Yeah, really?
It's crazy. Yeah.
With the noise meters now properly melted, we cunningly dispatched Christian von Koenigsegg in Rimac's silent supercar.
Yeah, I'll take it easy. I don't know the track, I don't know the car. I don't want to do anything stupid. So. That's wild. It's really crazy. The region is really nice. Wow. Cool. That's cool. I mean, you just feel at home immediately.
Hey Christian,
Hey,
how was that?
it was very nice.
Yeah.
Very predictable, very easy to drive, fun, powerful.
Mate had found the keys to the Koenigsegg, so the piece didn't last very long. Yeah, the idea of taking it slowly for the first few laps doesn't really apply to these guys.
It's crazy how fast the response is, even for a turbocharged car. Let's go! Yes. Please, a little bit less stretch control. I like my cars free. Now the rear plays a bit.
If you know anything about Mate Rimac's life story, you'll be aware his formative driving experiences were learning to skid about in an E30 BMW 3 Series. And as you can see, while you can take the kid out of the shonky old drift car, you can't take the petrol head out of the CEO. Isn't this exactly who you'd want running a supercar company? Or two?
It's like a motorcycle. Like, I never experienced this. Like when we started off, I told him immediately, give me manual and like turn off the auto shift, because that's what I always do, I want to shift myself.
Yeah.
And then it's like immediately in the rev limiter, and like you can't think and shift that fast. So you actually have to turn on this auto shift, which as soon as you are in the rev limiter, it goes to the next gear.
Yeah.
Because like it has 9 gears, so the difference between the ratios is so small, and the engine is just going, and the gearbox like just bang, 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 bang. I think you need a bit more time with the car to learn it, but it's incredible. And it's a big difference between the Venom and this car. It's a big difference.
Excellent. Well, plenty of stuff to talk about later.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's making quite a lot of noise out there, which is getting us in a little bit of trouble.
But that wasn't going to stop us. Next up, Mr. von Koenigsegg tries America's hypercar for the very first time, and I think he was having to concentrate quite hard.
It's cool, it's fun.
Hennessey's crew showed up with their car's tank brimmed with E85 ethanol, so the engine was developing its peak 1800 brake horsepower. Though Sonoma, like most racetracks, just doesn't have long enough straight to let it or any of these cars run flat out for long, it makes you wonder where owners plan to use them. Anyway, like Mate, Christian enjoyed the Venom's lumpy, vibrating idle.
Wow, it's cool how the whole thing kind of moves with the engine. Wow, that's thunder. Very cool. I mean, the first surprise, of course, how stiff the brake is. It's unassisted, so that was like, okay, getting used to. Like, ooh, wow. And then you get kind of the hang of it. Yeah. Like a bit old school brutal shifting, which is fun. It brings back good old memories. It's exciting experience. Yeah. We got into full power in a few sections. I took it quite easy to begin with, but really fast.
And here's something you probably never thought you'd ever see: John Hennessey being impressed by an EV.
Yeah, that feels really good. It's got plenty of frickin' power. The motors have a cool sound. This is authentically the way that the motors sound under power, which I think it sounds cool.
Obviously, any test drive of a hyperquick EV isn't complete without trying a full-bore launch control start.
Now your launch control.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
Well done for hanging on to your breakfast there, John.
How did you get on? Are you now an electric man?
I've been an electric man. I've owned a Tesla Plaid, and this is a Plaid, not just ×2, but this is so fast.
Is it? Yeah.
And you know, the one interesting thing about the Navara is I was telling their test driver, it's actually got a cool sound.
Yeah.
So, electric cars get kind of a bad rap for, my Plaid didn't really make any noise. And then if you want a noise, you'd make this phony noise through the infotainment or whatever.
Yeah.
This one, the electric motors actually have a cool sound to it.
Yeah.
And you could daily a car like this.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably fast in a straight line. And the overall, again, it's a very refined car.
There was just enough time for Mate to demonstrate his Nevera's on-the-limit handling to a very special passenger.
That is going to be absolute carnage, I guarantee it.
First, what you need to do, of course, more torque in the rear.
Yeah.
But then the car needs to know its true ground speed. And then you need to limit the delta speed between the true ground speed
Right.
and the maximum.
Of course, with all wheels spinning, you can't take the true ground speed through the wheels. You have to use
Sensors
and calculations.
Yes. Then actually we use the cameras as well to do photodometry.
We allow, depending on your speed, for different amounts of overspeeding.
Yeah, exactly. It's always like a certain percentage. Your inner wheel will always start spinning first, and then you overpower the outer wheel to spin that up. And then the last thing is the front two wheels are also contributing in a way that we send torque left and right to keep the car from spinning out.
Right.
So it feels to me like I'm in control.
Right.
But the car does a lot.
A physics lesson will only get you so far though. Time for a practical demonstration.
That's nice. That's fun.
It looks like they enjoyed that, and most importantly, all the bosses and their cars are in one piece. So that's the end of the track taster sessions. Join us next time when we sit down with the cars garaged and have the big boss debrief.
Mate came to me and said, "Christian, you're the last person that believes in the combustion engine." And 4 years later, he's making V16s.
Which motorsport today has torque vectoring, active aerodynamics, active suspension?
There's too many rules in motorsports. The noise police are looking for me right now.
Welcome back to Top Gear's Boss Level. In the last episode, you saw Christian von Koenigsegg, Mate Rimac and John Hennessey drive each other's ultimate hypercars for the first time ever at a racetrack. Well, now it's time for them to sit down, cool off and have a chat about the biggest questions in motoring. Well, gentlemen, you've had time to collect your thoughts after earlier, so have you ever done anything like that before, driving each other's cars?
No. I think it's the first time for me.
Very cool.
Well, you've driven a Regera.
Yeah, quite a while ago, early prototype.
Very early prototype.
But when we said it last year that we will do this, I was like, amazing, but I'm skeptic that we'll actually manage to do it. And so, incredible. Thank you for organizing it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all taking part. This doesn't happen without you. And thank you particularly for not burying anything in the wall.
Well, that's a challenge. You have these amazing cars, and to come out with a track that I'm not familiar with that has a lot of blind turns with the sun straight in your eyes was a bit intimidating. So nobody wanted to shun anybody's car, but it was a joy to get to experience both of your.
Not enough laps.
Yeah, not enough laps.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Just you got into it. It was
Bosses 3.0. We're going to a runway.
Oh, okay.
When the sun's not in our eyes.
Somewhere far away without noise limits, I think. I think everyone would love to hear the details of what you thought about the cars. So, Mate, I'm going to start with you because when you were last on Top Gear's meeting of the hypercar minds, you said that an electric hypercar ruins you, it spoils you because of its response and it's so far beyond what you're used to.
It kind of ruins everything else for you. Like everything else feels really slow after that.
Having driven these cars today, do you still feel that way?
Yeah, it's totally different. And it was really good for me to, after I have driven the other cars, to jump back in the Nevera to compare, and it's totally different. So, there's pros and cons to each, right? In a Vera, you jump in and immediately you can, use the performance, and you just go flat out, and it's easier and more approachable to have the performance. With the combustion engines, you have to learn more about what the car is doing, and especially with turbocharged engines, you have to understand how it builds up boost. And I mean, the cars are so different. It was such an experience to test them back to back, and I mean, we are so lucky here today because no one in the world has done this.
Right, true.
Because like you might test one car and then months later you test another one, but when you do it back to back, it's incredible. You still have all the feelings from the other car just moments ago. So I was driving the F5 first, and that's like, as I said, like a huge engine in a very nimble, go-kart style of chassis car. So the engine is absolutely dominating, and it has this, pressure build up, the big boost coming. So that's something I needed to get used to a bit. So just after the 3 laps, I was just about getting used to the car, so to push it a bit more. But it's really a monster, and especially when you stand still, the whole car is rocking by the engine just being. The engine just being idle. That's funny. And then the Jesko, what totally surprised me, when I get in a car, I usually turn off traction control, put in the manual, and just drive in manual. And with the Jesko, I did that immediately and turned off this thing that's like auto shift.
Auto shifting at rev limit.
Yeah, I don't need that. And then 3 seconds later, I was in the rev limiter. I'm like, I'm going to damage the car or something. And shift up, sorry, won't happen again. And then a second after, I was in the rev limiter again, because of the 9 gears. They're
short.
They're super short. It's too fast for your brain. Maybe when you have used it.
When you get used to it,
yeah, you need to do really this.
Rapid fire.
Yeah,
like a shifter cart.
So I had to turn it back on because it was just too much to cope with. New track, new car,
sun in your eyes.
I couldn't handle it. So I was it's like in a game where you go from the hard setting to a little bit less, to medium setting with that. So with that, it was easier to drive, and the engine and gearbox were just rapid fire, and bang, 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 bang. That was really incredible.
Yeah, we were all pretty impressed by your pit exit in the Jesko. You were straight up to high revs. That was there was no getting used to the car there. That was impressive. I want to move to Christian. No stranger to ultimate twin turbo V8. So did you immediately feel comfortable straight away in the Hennessey?
I think I did. I mean, what surprised me was, of course, that I wasn't told before there was no brake booster, so I had to get used to that. That was the big surprise. Otherwise, I felt at home in the car. It's easy to drive, I would say, and it didn't feel overpowered. It felt powerful, but not overpowered. Predictable, stiff. So nice steering. Of course, the AMT is a bit like our earlier cars, a little bit more old school shifting, which is fun. You get this extra surge every time you shift, which is cool. So yeah, but it was good. But it took some getting used to with the brake. But when you get used to it, of course, you have this very good control over it because you have no filter. Sure. You just need to push harder, and you just need to get used to that. But very exciting, and not intimidating. I thought it would be intimidating, but I didn't feel intimidated by it. It felt
you didn't have enough room to really get it to intimidation mode. But
no, but I pushed full on some sections with kind of not only in this exact straight line. Was nice and predictable.
So the way that thing was idling, like a kind of top fuel dragster at low revs, you did well not to be intimidated by it, and then you went from that to a completely silent car.
Yeah, and I've been driving electric cars daily for the last 12 years. I got my first Tesla in 11 or 12 or something, very early, like the first one in Sweden of the Model S, and then I moved up eventually to the Plaid and these cars, and of course it's still a big difference. Plaid is quite fast. So I kind of, that experience prepared me a bit, of course. This is even more brutal. But it was very, very, again, friendly, predictable. You immediately felt at home in it. Nothing felt like out of the order. It was honed and well executed and friendly. monster, I would say.
Really monster. Yeah.
And then right at the end there, Mate was good enough to take you out and show you the drift mode.
Exactly, and also his driving skills. You drove faster than I did, that's for sure. And very impressive and very cool with drifting. I actually drifted myself first, even so, same corner. So, but yeah, very cool. But yeah, in the end, at that pad there, very cool drifting and good driving. So.
All right, and John, you've built an empire on, as you say, making fast cars go faster. Sure. So I presume you jump out of these gentlemen's car and you were thinking, where can I put the supercharger?
No, I know leave well enough alone. Both amazing cars, like yourself. I have had a Tesla Plaid for 2 years, so I feel like I've got a pretty good reference point for fast electric, but obviously Navara is on a completely different level. But the thing that I do compare between those two cars is the Navara could totally be driven as a daily driver. And I know, I think I've got a client or two that they'd actually drive their Navaras quite a lot. So I was surprised that on the braking, the regen felt really good. And then also something I was coming your team when I was, or with your test driver, as we're driving around.
Oh yeah.
I think the sound of the motors is pretty cool. I think EVs kind of get a bad rap.
Cool squirking sound when you push hard.
That's true too. It down low, the tail wants to wag a little bit, but then the torque vectoring takes control and you straightens you up. But yeah, I thought that.
And it's all natural. It's not like.
It's natural. It's not being pumped through the speakers. So
yeah, it's nothing.
So
it's official,
if I had all the money in the world, I'd have each one of their cars. And then on Christian's car, I think my first impression was, so your test driver is great. The first thing he does, he gets in there and doesn't turn traction control all the way off, but kind of just turns it like kind of on the edge to keep me out of the ditch. And so like as soon as I got on it, the tail started wagging and the back end started kicking out. And it was making all the bangs and pops and on the decel, so it was setting off all the alarms on the track. So that was a lot of fun. And so it was more raw than I was expecting.
Yeah, it's pretty visceral.
But at the same time, when you're not in throttle, it's refined. And I thought it was a good balance between raw and refinement, depending on how far into the throttle you want to push it.
It's surprisingly docile when you don't push, but when you push it, it's visceral.
And then the controls, I would need an engineer sitting next to me the whole time, or I would need to go to school to learn how to. I mean, you got to push a button for everything, but that's cool. I mean, you can control the doors and the rear hatch and things of that nature. So.
And we were able, thanks to the laptop, to turn down some of the pops and bangs, because we should explain that if you're in Northern California and you heard a load of racket coming from Sonoma Raceway, that was John's fault. That was entirely John.
The noise police are looking for me right now. So.
But this was a pretty novel experience. Maybe people aren't aware, but you don't get to benchmark each other's cars. You've never have a customer maybe bring one to the factory and say, have a go in this and see what you think?
It's not impossible. I mean, sometimes customers come with other cars and sometimes they want to drive on our airfield. Yeah, it's not that common.
But differently also, we are very close, I mean, John not so much because we are on a different continent, sure. But we know each other for a while, and same thing also with Horatio. And, I visited Christian 15 times, he visited us 15 times, and we are very open to each other. So we don't get to drive the cars, but we see everything else.
But now we have clients that have, whether it's Steve Hamilton and other guys, there's a lot of crossovers. So eventually, I would say, your cars start coming to the US, some of our cars end up in Europe. There will be collections that will have,
absolutely.
I guess maybe we're kind of like the unholy trinity, something like that. I heard that, so I'm not claiming that one. I heard somebody say that earlier, but anyway.
Yeah, Steve has actually all the cars that we had here, so he's doing some fun stuff with that.
Yeah, for sure.
We just need to find a track with a louder noise limit.
I hear like bigger car brands, they do these exchanges with cars among themselves, and we've been offered that a couple of times. If I can. Yeah, we get to borrow their cars and they get to borrow our cars. It's just that they produce thousands of theirs and they take one of our 3 prototypes or something. And
not a fair trade.
Yeah, so it's just...
well, we do that because,
You do that, yeah.
I mean, we also have a tech company selling technology.
Right.
And believe me, pretty much every automotive executive has been in Zagreb testing the cars. But we also actually gave some Navaras to people like, Porsche or companies like that, to Nardo. To the test track and do whatever you want. We are very open when it comes to that.
That's cool.
Well, I'm so glad that you've got to sample these cars, albeit shortly. I'm very sorry that the Bugatti didn't get to be quite as involved as we would have liked, but unfortunately that's the noise limits just getting in the way there. But it's kind of a great endorsement perhaps for the electric hypercar, that was the one that was allowed to be kept running the longest, so an advantage.
Welcome to California.
So I want to jump onto some wider topics. These are things that people have commented on in Top Gear YouTube videos, and I thought who better to put these topics to, and you guys can have at it. We'll start off with something nice and gentle just to bed you in. Electric hypercars. What are your customers telling you about the sorts of cars that they want from you, that they want you to make? And is it possible that the electric supercars honeymoon period is already over?
Who starts?
Yeah, who starts? I mean, I think you should start because
Yeah, for sure.
I wish that people had the opportunity to experience what I experienced today here with these different cars. I was actually, getting back in the Nevera, I was like, man, this is an awesome car. Like even here on the track with these other cars, like I wish other people would have experienced that and give their verdict, because I'm of course biased. It's actually like giving you such a different experience, and it's really brutal on track, and gives you stuff that other cars can't. But not just because, that's what I'm always saying, like it's not enough to make just an electric car, it has to do other things. And what we are doing, for example, at 4 Motors, we invest a lot in torque vectoring. We do that for a long time, and with the flick of a switch the car is completely different. So in track mode, you are super neutral, you don't have oversteer, you don't have understeer, the car is still playful. Click, boom, you have a drift machine, a drift monster, and you can confidently drift a little bit away from a wall, and that stuff you can't really easily do with traditional cars. So for me, it's really about offering something special to customers, and people who have the Nevera, they love it and they use it a lot, maybe even more than their other hypercars. But you have this initial conception that people have about electric cars, and many of them don't want to even try it. But when they do, they see, okay, now I get it. So it's not easy to be the first on the market with a new brand. It takes some time, and the Nevera is the best-selling electric hypercar out there. And now we just showed the Nevera R, so we think, in the end, it will change the market, but it takes some time.
Christian, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with what he says, that it offers a lot of opportunity with torque vectoring and so on. And then, there is a resistance in the market for EV at this level, because people like the sound, they're afraid of battery life, they're afraid of the weight, because they're usually heavier if it's a big battery pack in there. So I maybe would like to then talk a little bit about our Gemera, where we have 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel torque vectoring from our combustion engine and or from our electrical motor, or in combination. So then you have all of these kind of benefits of the absolute directness, but with a roaring, fast revving, similar engine to the Jesko with a 9-speed LST transmission with torque vectoring, with the instant torque of the 1250 Newton meter dark matter e-motor, at a much lower weight, but with 4 seats. So I think right now that is more attractive to the market. Eventually maybe when batteries become lighter, so the car is not heavier, then that kind of downside is mitigated. The sound is an emotional aspect. I think the Nevera makes an interesting sound, for sure. But I think the preconception is that combustion engines are more alive and living creatures, breathing, pumping, creating heat or whatever. It's just more of an animal, I guess, right? You have more of a dialogue with a vehicle, I guess, and especially if it's lighter. So, but I think your question was, what does the what do our customers tell us? And the reason why we started developing electric propulsion systems as well was we were thinking we need to go electric, because that's where the market is going. And then it was really like, no. It's okay, you can do hybrid, but don't just give us full electric cars. We drive that on a daily basis. They're good, they're fast, they're practical, they do everything we want. But for the weekend warrior, for the fun time, I want this dialogue with my car. I want to speak to it. I want to argue with it with an exciting engine at lower weight. But of course, these torque vectoring aspects are truly interesting and can enhance the performance. So with the Gemera, we have that, but with a hybrid, that is much lighter than if it was a pure EV. And the fun of shifting, I mean, you can argue shifting is a pro or a con, and it takes getting used to and this and that, but it is an engagement factor. So I think as long as you can do it fast and efficiently, and have maximum potential performance, I think right now it's what the market wants and what I can relate to myself as exciting, generally speaking.
And John, what's the view from Texas?
I mean, my customers, again, our customers are predominantly from the U.S. We have maybe of the 40 cars we've sold, we have 10 outside the U.S. None of them want electrification. Now, in terms of what they come to us for, they want pure internal combustion. I do have clients that have some of your cars, and obviously your cars as well, and they own Teslas or whatever. But again, for what our clients tell us is they want, from F5, they want a sense of occasion. They want all the sensory inputs that come from not only the sound, the vibration, even the smell from internal combustion. And again, we're not alone. I mean, I've been modifying cars for 34 years and all internal combustion. We took a look at the EV market. We actually had designed this 6-wheel drive kind of crazy concept, Project Deep Space. And as we're showing it to our clients and dealers, they all basically told us, you know what, that's interesting, maybe down the road, but right now we want you to keep building internal combustion. And that's really kind of that's our core competency, that's our wheelhouse. And so I don't really see that changing for the next car after when F5's done, maybe later in the decade. The next car will be purely internal combustion. So again, I don't disagree with you guys in that torque vectoring and the preciseness of throttle control. I do like when I drive a Plaid being able to just like drive with one foot, take my foot off the gas, and just the regen slows me down. I think those are cool things. But again, when somebody comes to us and they're going to spend $2 to almost $4 million on one of our hypercars, they want this real sense of occasion and the rowdiness and the rocking and rolling from the cam loping and the exhaust making noise. But that's what our clients are telling us.
Sure. So it's at this level of the market, does it feel like it's changed almost in the past couple of years? Because
I would say so. Absolutely. Yeah. It just switched pretty much.
Yeah, I think in mainstream cars, there's been perhaps more opposition to EVs than there was maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. I remember the Quail 4 years ago, and I think I told you the other week, Mate came to me and said, Krista, you're the last person that believes in the combustion engine. And 4 years later, he's making V16s. I remember that well.
Unexpected.
Yeah, exactly. It was funny. And I think, the environmental aspect is something I care about a lot, and I think that's what also brought you into EV originally. So if you can run your car on some kind of renewable fuel, there are various kinds and better or worse ones, and combine it with some kind of small battery hybrids, you can regenerate your energy instead of just breaking it away with heat. I think a lightweight hybrid with a small battery pack running on renewable fuel is much better from a CO2 output perspective than a big battery pack sports car that's not being driven many miles, because it takes so many miles to recuperate the raw material you take out of the ground. And also it takes away the fear of having to replace a battery that if it's a small one, it probably feels less fearsome than if it's a big one. And of course, as normal cars go more and more electric, there is less need for the other cars left for liquid fuel, so the renewable fuel source becomes less restricted and more abundant than when everyone is needing to use it. So I think there's a huge opportunity to start shifting in more. Instead of E10, you go E20, E30, and you can blend in butanol and other e-fuels and maybe go kind of 50-50. So you kind of, for the normal fleet of cars, you can use the pump stations to improve drastically in parallel to electrification, and also because of electrification, because you need less of it. And then for sports cars that are not more driven on a weekend basis or a monthly basis or whatever it is, you actually have, you get to have the cake and eat it. A lighter car with the sound, with less CO2 output than a pure, fully big battery pack electric that is not driven enough.
But in the end, I think we are all about making something special and pushing the limits, right? So each one of us pushes the limit in a certain direction. And, you know, like we don't have Horatio here, but, you know, he's all about art and like details in the car. So on, Christian is about crazy inventions and making them happen. John is about big engines and, you know, raw power.
The driving experience. That's what we're about, the driving experience.
And driving experience. So, you know, we have pushed the limits when it comes to electrification. And I think that's interesting that we, you know, all push in a direction and see where it goes, you know. You know, our customers don't have one car. As John said, like there's many of his customers who have an Nevera, vice versa also, and many of our Bugatti customers have a Koenigsegg as well, and there's actually some who have all of our cars. So, you know, we offer them different experiences and different products, but that also then impacts maybe the wider industry, because stuff like what Christian is doing with free valve or what we are doing with our batteries and stuff like that, it also ends up in the wider market. So I think it's exciting, and we should all keep pushing in our own directions. And, you know, there is enough market and enough appetite for luckily, you know, there are customers who like what we do as well, and they're ready to pay a lot of money so that we can do these exciting things.
Absolutely. If there's space for all of them, then long may it continue. We're going to change topic now, and we're going to talk about records. Because sitting around the table here, we have many record breakers. John Hennessey, currently the standing
half mile
record holder, and Koenigsegg just yesterday the Laguna Seca lap record, and Koenigsegg and Rimac have been trading 0 to 400 Ks to 0 record back and forth. But there's one missing. We haven't seen any of your latest models go for a VMAX run. So when are we going to see a new top speed
I'm waiting for Christian to get finished tire development for us.
And I'm waiting for Bugatti to finish tire development for us. We all run on Michelin. Yeah. So I don't know who should start. But
I guess the big number that needs to fall is 500 kilometers per hour.
500K, baby.
300 miles per hour fell. And I think
in one direction.
I think all of the 3 cars can do it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of when and where.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the aero. We've tested that. We have tested in our 4-wheel dyno, full aero load and everything, that the powertrain can push beyond 500. It's down to having the tire, and of course Bugatti has proven. How fast did you drive with the what was called the 300?
That was 490 kilometers per hour.
490, yeah, so not
3 or 4.77.
But it's about having the approval for the tire at the moment to be able to plan the attempt.
To make it safe.
Yeah. Sure, but for you, does it have to be a completely homologated, ready for a customer to buy tire, or if there was like a one-off set created, would you go for it?
Well, that's what we did before. I mean, the car that we took the record, the 477, 277.9 miles per hour, or 400, what was it, 447 kilometers per hour. It was on a normal road tire. It was on a customer car with his normal road tire. So we felt that was a good statement. I think if it's only a tire for record breaking, it's less exciting, because then the customers can't really buy the whole package, right?
But you can't actually do that, because when you do a tire, there is a certain investment behind, and when you can spread that investment amongst, I don't know, hundreds of cars that you will make, or however many cars you make, then you can justify it. But you would need to invest the same amount of money if you just make a one-off tire. So that doesn't work. So you have to actually use the same tire that you would use for the customer. Economics force you to do it.
Sure. I mean, John, I'm sure you're champing at the bit for this. Where's Hennessey come into the picture on top speed?
For us, it's we believe the Michelin Cup 2 R tires capable of running the speeds. Every car has different, download parameter, downforce parameters, and load sensitivity. We're probably going to do a test with Michelin. I think you've done this before on their aircraft.
Sure.
Tire dyno, where they can spin the tires up to 300 miles an hour. For us, really, it's more a matter of where's the venue. So basically, you got the choice of a runway. Runway is just basically very short, so you'd have to have a very hard launch, very hard acceleration, get up to the speed, and then get on the brakes before you run out of runway. Okay. So even if one of our cars could hit 300 or 500K on a runway, that's not going to be the VMAX.
No,
not even close, right? So then we're relegated to a highway, which you did successfully, but I think it's just dangerous as you know what. And it's super narrow, and you got cables down the middle of that thing, and you got animals. You could have a deer decides to cross the road when you're going 280 miles an hour. So I think for us, we want to do it on a runway.
Well, the longest runway is the NASA Kennedy Space Center.
3.2 miles, yeah. It's very, 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 it's not, you get going fast, you're driving 400 feet per second.
That's the problem. You stop accelerating, you're still accelerating, but you're just chewing up the miles.
Sure. So
and then you need to slam the brakes.
So I was joking to Mate earlier. I'm like, well, how about aerolysane? And he's like, well, I don't know if Volkswagen will let us do that.
Yeah,
but,
don't think so. But there is other places, like I was just mentioning in Croatia, there's just a new highway being built that's like the asphalt is there, but it's not open for public use yet.
How many lanes wide?
Well, 3 lanes wide. Okay. 3 lanes wide.
Well, that might be okay.
Or I'm sure some countries like Saudi Arabia or Dubai would be happy to, they have lots of like straight roads.
Texas, we're actually that's another possibility is where we've done some project with the state of Texas where they've let us test on new highways. But again, it's kind of the aspect of not being able to control animals, and I've hit birds going almost 200 miles per hour, and so it's kind of there's a risk versus reward. Sure, there's a reward of the bragging right that goes with that, but I think at the end of the day, I think most of my clients have bought our car not based upon, so it'd be cool for them to be able to brag about it, but it's just something that we have to be, our company, and I'm sure you guys, we have to be super careful about how we approach it, whether it's the tire or the venue. Yeah. So yeah, there's big bragging rights if somebody gets that. And again, Bugatti went the 304 in one direction. A 2-way average would be nice, which you guys have done. I've got to bust your balls a little bit, Mate. But no, at the end of the day, huge respect. The first car over 300, that's a big deal. For the first car to go over 300 miles per hour, 2-way average is a big deal. For one of those cars, if you can hit 500K in one direction, is even bigger. Yeah, so, sure. But we didn't build our businesses by sitting back and not taking risk and not pushing the boundaries.
Exactly.
So that's part of our DNA for our company. That's what we do. And look, in the process of doing this, our team becomes better, car becomes better.
Sure.
And it's part of the provenance and the history behind the car that the customers love. Yeah. The customers are not necessarily going to try to go out and replicate that, but they sure want to brag to their mates that, the car did that.
Sure. I'm kind of surprised one of your customers hasn't just volunteered to build you like a 10-mile straight so you can settle this once and for all. But maybe someone out there will try that. If top speed was to stop being the ultimate currency of the hypercar, then what for you would be the most glamorous must-have record?
I think that, the top speed, we all have cars right now that potentially can do the 500 mark, right? So that's interesting, and I know your predecessors Bugatti said they wouldn't chase it. You might chase it, so that's cool. I think we will try to do it with Absolute if we get the tire and the venue, but we will not. We've always said that will be the fastest car we ever made because we need longer gear ratio. We need everything to do that, which sort of compromises a bit what you can do otherwise with the car. You can have less kind of maybe ultimate downforce due to what you need to create in drag. So. To me, it's more about overall performance and maximum emotional connectedness to the car. And now we have with the CC 850, we have this unusual manual automatic with paddle shift combination where you can choose to engage with the car in so many different ways. And again, like you said, experience different cars at the same track the same day, you really understand the differences. And in the same car, having auto manual with clutch and paddle shift, you can really, wow, that's the difference between these systems. And I noticed that when I drive in a mountain pass or in a twisty road, I really enjoy the manual and think it's like probably the best way to engage with the car and to flow with the road because you can feather the clutch as well, which you can't do with the paddles. But on a track, you really want both hands on your steering wheel with the paddle. And in town or in traffic jam, auto is not bad. But I think the manual aspect of it, where the car becomes your exoskeleton. It's not better or worse than you are as a driver. It's not about the ultimate performance. It's about what can you do to the car and what can it give you back, and how can it learn you to become a better, more engaged driver with huge performance on top and huge excitement, of course, and design and features that make it stand out from normal cars. But just that, the way I've started categorizing that exoskeleton feature, that you become one with the car, it's an extension of who you are. I think that's what we're going
to follow on that, and I would agree with in terms of, like, again, there's bragging rights, whether it's a lap record, whether it's 0 to 400K, standing mile, 0 to 60. There's all kinds of, you guys own almost all the records, right? But again, at the end of the day, like you just said, our clients, they tell us the driving experience, the engagement with the car. And so years ago, when kind of F5 was still on the drawing board, we thought, well, should we do a manual, not do a manual? Again, paddle shift, we delivered 24 cars. Well, we just announced to our clients last week at Pebble Beach that we're going to offer 12 manual, Venom F5 manual, true manual. So again, you've got this cool technology. We're old school, so when you push the clutch in, it's got a cable going back to the clutch and the gearbox. So if you want to slip the clutch or whatever. So I think all those cars will be sold in the next few days. So when we told our clients, they were just like, are you going to detune it? I'm like, no, full 1,800 horsepower. Now, we don't give you 1,800 horsepower in first gear. By fourth gear, yeah, you got the full power, you can go for it. So again, I think that is much more meaningful for our clients, the feedback that we get, that again, there's amazing technologies. You guys are probably more tech than we are. We're maybe more old school, so we're maybe a little bit more like, the Cobra from back in the 60s or whatever. And again, there's a lot of our clients can own the best of all worlds, right?
Enjoy the different flavors.
Absolutely. So I think, again, that's what I hear from clients and enthusiasts, that the driving experience somewhat trumps the bragging right about.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And also Nürburgring lap times, in the end, really, who cares? Because you cannot come close to...
The Germans care.
Yeah, but
Am I right?
I love to test our cars. I always test them, but I don't test them on tracks that much because I can't get anywhere near. And I consider myself a pretty good driver, but I can get anywhere near what these cars can really do on the track. So how many people actually can? And I think the records are interesting just to push the limits, but what's really interesting for our customers are other things. For example, now on the Tourbillon, this wonderful steering wheel with the fixed hub, with the analog clusters, then the exposed engine, the V16 engine that you can see from outside with this beautiful carbon plenum, the beautiful shifting mechanism of Koenigsegg, like I told Christian already several times. I love that, and I'm jealous that I didn't come up with that idea. This augmented shifting, or however you call it. On the Nevera, these modes with the torque vector, that's the stuff that make the car special. And every car like that has to have 3, 4, 5 stories. I remember, for example, when the Huayra came out, it had these little 4 winglets. Right. And we can talk about it if they do anything or not, but that was
it's spectacle.
It was spectacle. When you went right, they were having a different pitch angle, and people were like, wow, look at this,
Sure.
So it's one of the stories.
Yeah, don't disagree with that.
Since we were talking about manuals there, and obviously, John, thank you for telling us about the manual Venom. Yeah. Looking forward to seeing more of that. I want to move onto a topic of resto mods. This is becoming a big deal, not just in classic cars, but they were at the Quail. They've infiltrated the hypercar world. There was all sorts there. Mate, you were papped on the Eccentrica stands, checking out the V12 Diablo. Can I get your thoughts on the rise of the resto mod, and is it a good thing for the car world, or does it mean we're running out of original ideas?
Good question. I think, Singer, I've seen them at the Quail now for probably 7, 8, 10 years. They really pioneered the popularity among the broader audience and have done a fantastic job at it. And of course, I don't know, is there inflation? Who knows? I don't know, maybe. It's a lot happening in that space at the moment, and it's a difficult question, right? does it take away from the purity of the original, or is it the other way around? I don't know. Difficult to say. I don't know what my take is on it, actually.
I'm a big fan. I think, again, Restomods, whether it's American Muscle, whether it's some of the classic Italians, I think they're all very cool. I think it's a very cool art form. I think it's from a business perspective, with the significant investment of manufacturing, homologating a car, to take an older car that's maybe 25 years older that you can source from around the world, and it's got a VIN plate and it's got a title, and you can add all this modern design and technology to it. I think it's great. I just wish I could afford more of them. I mean, the really nice ones are $500,000 to $2 million, and I'd have one of each of them. I think they're very cool. It's something that our business we've looked at doing Restomods. In our modification business, we modify about 600 vehicles a year. On F5 production, we build one per month, so very, very limited, bespoke. We have about 5,000 man hours in each F5. But if I had additional staff and resources, I won't say what cars we would want to Restomod, but I've got a few Restomod ideas. So it's high on our potential list of future things that we may offer or do. So
I can imagine some American muscle cars out there with some Hennessey power.
Maybe even some non-American cars.
Ooh, yeah, that's a tantalizing thought.
Save that for another conversation.
Yeah, so I love Restomods as well. I'm very close also with the Singer guys, so with Maz and Rob. I have a turbo on order, so I have one coming. I like these kind of cars, and for me, my journey started with an E30, and I always wanted an E30 M3, and luckily now I could afford one. And I love driving that car, and I love looking at it. It's beautiful, but honestly,
does it live up to the?
No.
Oh no.
Oh man, ouch. Sorry, Rob.
Well, I love to drive it, but just because it's this E30, but the driving experience.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Singer. Okay, you're talking about the E30. Okay.
Yeah, E30, not Singer. Yeah, E30, because the steering, the brakes, engine performance, everything is on a totally different level. Even the most basic cars today are better at steering or braking or even acceleration at that thing, And I would love to have a E30 with a V. That's one project I want to do one day. I actually want to do a Restomod of E30, with a V10.
The V10 out of the old M5.
Yeah, exactly.
So 8,000 RPM.
Yeah,
throttle bodies.
That sounds cool, actually. Something like that. So I would love to do that. So I think this combination of beautiful old cars with modern technology and more performance is great. But walking around Quail the other day, I was like, oh, there's lots of stuff going on there.
It feels a little bit like inflation, right?
It is inflation. Everyone wants to copy Singer.
Right, yeah. So maybe that's the problem I have with it. It's just, it seems like a bit of a money grab at the moment. Everyone saw that success.
Well, certainly in the Porsche space, there's so many companies that are all doing.
But it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. Right. But everyone should try to execute at that really high level, I think.
But there is lots of passion behind it. I was talking to this guy who was doing the Diablo and also the Porsche, the front engine one. I always forget the
928.
Yeah. So they're really passionate. They love it. They do it because they love it, and they put their own money into it. And
you see these guys that are doing the Restomod on the Range Rover, so it doesn't have to be a performance car.
Exactly.
It goes back to the nostalgia of my dad had this or my grandfather had that.
But I think it shows the lack of desirability within modern car space. That's, I think, what's driving this. Exactly. It's everyone is looking back to the good old days, and that, I think, is what disturbs me a bit. That we should be able to create that feeling and emotion with who we are today and what we do today, and it just seems to be lacking somehow, given that all of that needs to happen.
You can't do everything. If you look at these cars from before, they're so much smaller, but not just because
you can make a smaller modern car.
Yeah, but look at the side impact of today, and side impact, what was the door of a Mini, of an initial Mini?
But then I would say also safety. If you can get that emotion of a Restomod, but with today's safety, that's not a bad thing.
Which leads to basically another evolving market from Restomod is retromod. So to taking a modern car and making it appear and operate like an older car. So that's a new thing. Again, that's a twist in the market that we're looking at.
I would say with our CC850, we kind of
Just going to mention the CC850 because
that's a good example of that.
If you park it next to the CC8S, the first car we ever produced, it's hard to tell them apart. I mean, it's a little bit bigger and it looks a little bit better because we are better at doing things now. But I'm very impressed what we could do with like 8 to 10 persons back in the day.
But you have all the modern, you have the new shifter and all that.
But there you have all the modern safety, all the modern emission things, but you have the emotion of the original, but taken to 11, but everything else is there.
I like the white wheels on the white too. It looks good. It's old school.
Yeah, a bit 80s.
Yeah, it looks, Miami Vice.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe that's where I was going in my mind, really.
But the cool thing at the core of this, there's desirability, there's demand for cool, bespoke driving experiences, which is what drives all of our business.
Yeah, exactly. But it's cool to see so much variety. Also, like in Bala, for example, with this crazy, off-road 911.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's cool things happening.
I've got my 911 car in the parking lot. I'm driving to Colorado tomorrow.
Oh, that was yours?
Yeah.
Driving home in a straight line all the way. Yeah. Maybe you guys are all building as well the new originals, and maybe, who knows, someone watching this in 20 years or more might be taking a Rimac with what the latest technology is then and putting it in a body that looks like that, or a Hennessey with who knows what V8 in it.
And that's a good point, because what I hear in the market is, if I buy an electric hyper supercar, what about the battery in 10 years and it's old and it's big and so. Well, in 10, 15 years, you can have a battery pack maybe of half the size doing more that cost a fifth that you can put into the car.
They said that 10 years ago. I'm still waiting for it. I'm still waiting for it to happen.
So I mean, they're this kind of, the future is for you, not against you. Yeah. It will just be easier and easier to replace those battery packs. So that fear is kind of a bit misplaced, I would say.
Yeah, I'm ready for a Restomod with a V16 up front, rear drive, put your name on it,
V16 in the front.
Yeah. Like a Bugatti Royale for the 21st century.
Bugatti Royale, 25 feet long.
That sounds fun.
Well, when we talk about Bugatti Royale, just one small digression, So that was 100 years ago, where you had this incredible looking car with these proportions and 24-inch wheels. Imagine that, like at the time when like my ancestors were living, like without, like people were living 500 years ago, and then in some places
someone was driving that thing.
Someone was driving that thing, and I imagine you just had like goats and donkeys running around, and then someone comes with a Bugatti Royale on 24-inch wheels 100 years ago. So how do you create that today? How do you create such a big contrast today? Can you even do it?
Do you want to even?
Yeah, that's a question. I don't know, but I think
it's a crazy balance of like, I'm sure we all have our crazy ideas, really crazy stuff in the back of our minds we might tell our wives about, or maybe some of our employees about, but we don't want to scare too many of our employees. But then there's this balance of like commerciability. So it's like it's you can take a crazy idea, and you guys have put a lot of crazy ideas that are in your cars, right? Yeah. They live and breathe today. But some of the like really, like you're talking about, like something modern version of the Royale or something like that, there's a cost for that, right? So then we have to, we have, whether it's our shareholders or customers, nobody wants to build something and then nobody wants to buy, right? So there's kind of that balance. But
it's gotta be a business.
Anyway, I've got a list of kind of crazy vehicles I like to just build for myself, and maybe somebody else would want to buy it. I mean, so.
Well, we have to also understand, maybe the viewers don't understand that necessarily, that it takes years and hundreds of people and piles, like mountains of money to develop a car. It's not just like we wake up.
And then if you change your mind and I want to move the door handle from here to here, exactly. You're toast. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right, speaking of hosing away huge amounts of money, we know that you're all passionate engineers. We can see that you're all incredibly competitive. So one of the last big topics that I want to get onto is motorsport. We don't see Hennessey, Koenigsegg, Bugatti or Rimac competing at the top level of elite motorsport. Gentlemen, why is that?
We talked about that earlier, and I think something that Mate said that totally resonated with me was the fact that there's too many rules in motorsports, right? So again, if we want to, like you're talking about building this crazy single-seater, would you say that you think that thing could run the Nordschleife in 4.5 minutes or something like that?
Whoa. I was not here for this conversation. What's this?
You can tell that story.
It will be very fast. It will be, we want to build a car. So first of all, why not racing? So everyone is asking me that because my background was racing. And for me, racing was always like war for cars, because in war you develop technologies in fast cycles, and that's what racing for me is about. And people say, yeah, but you have those rules, so it's more about the drivers. But if you're really interested in purely the human aspect, there's pure human sports disciplines, hundreds of them. So why motorsport, which is around technology and the machine as well, why to ignore the machine factor? And motorsport existed to develop new technologies, to compete against each other, and then trickle down to the road, to have some relevance. Today it doesn't have any relevance. It's just about the rules, and it's more of a lawyer's game of how you get around the rules.
It's a balance of performance that you're referring to, that everyone is bogged down to the lowest common denominator. Yeah. And that's the really annoying part. And I think when I started Koenigsegg, I built the first CC8S according to the GT1 regulation, in width, cockpit area, everything with the ambition of going GT1 racing. And that regulation was you were not allowed to be over 1,100 kilos, and depending on your engine type, you got a certain size of restrictor to limit you to not have much more than 600 horsepower. Everything else, you could be very freely inventive about in competing with technology. And if you won, you were not bogged down by weight or other kind of balanced performance, as long as you had your correct restrictor for your engine.
So which motorsport today has torque vectoring, active aerodynamics, active suspension, or even stuff like active camber?
Right.
None.
So let's start our own racing series.
Yeah.
I mean, there's such an opportunity, I think, for a new way of thinking about racing with much more freedom. You can put up boundaries, which makes it not go dangerously crazy, but then a completely different level of freedom. And for example, let's say there is a team or a car model that is wildly faster than all the others. Maybe it could be okay to be bogged down by some kind of restriction if you, for example, have lamps on the car, and each lamp means like 20 kilos of extra weight. So you see this super fast car with 4 red lamps on it, oh crap, that car has like 80 kilos of extra weight because it won too much and it's still winning. Then you kind of show your technology, it's visible that you are beating everyone with your one hand behind your back.
There's a lot of politics, there's a lot of sandbagging, there's a lot of in racing. But that, even with that being said, me personally, I would still like to build a car that could compete at Le Mans at some point.
Right.
So that's what we would like to do. That's not F5. It's maybe the next car. But I think there's still something romantic and special about Le Mans. And I don't disagree with anything you guys have said. But I do feel like in some forms of racing, there's the politics and there's the BOP and there's all that. But there's still something cool about, if you win Le Mans, I think that's really, really cool. But even just to compete at Le Mans, would be really, really cool. Yeah.
So when you see the likes of Aston Martin, Lamborghini now all returning to Le Mans, or going for the first time, is that kind of tugging at the heartstrings for you?
Yes, but at the same time, I don't have the thought about showing up and being the overall winner, but I think just to be able to build a car that fits within the rules and competes and completes the full 24 hours.
I think this hypercar regulation, hypercars is supposedly what we're doing. Even I don't like the term very much. It doesn't
really represent the cars that we build.
But those they're racing prototypes. I have a hard time relating to them. They hardly look like a car to me. I would like to have something that looks like something you can buy.
Or GTD, GT class.
That is based on that races, and there's like direct connection of evolution and development between the two, and if someone likes it, they can kind of buy it and drive.
Right. Well, you see, like the Ford Mustang, the GT3 that races at Le Mans is very closely related to the road car.
And that was GT racing back in the day. The top in the 60s and 50s. That's how it worked. It's a more traditional way, which I can relate much more to. But there's nothing at the most extreme version of road cars anymore, which is sad, basically.
Okay, hopefully someone watching this can sort out Le Mans, Daytona, whatever it is, and change endurance racing for the better. All right, we're going to round off with one kind of quick fire lightning round, just to end on a positive note. Having driven all 3 or each of the others' cars today. Could you just identify one element that impressed you so much you would like to take it home with you tonight and install it on one of your cars in the future? What would it be that really stood out for you?
Quick, daily drivability, balance of aggression with drivability.
Yeah, so I think just the ease of usability in the Nevera and the accessibility of the power is just truly amazing. How accessible it is and easy to use, so for sure. And of course, just the rawness of the experience and the visceralness of the F5 was amazing. It makes your blood boil, basically. It was very, very exciting. Yeah. And I think we have a lot of that, of course, as well. But,
of course you do.
But it's definitely inspirational.
We definitely share that in common, for sure.
Yeah. For me, like the most interesting thing, or most memorable for me, was this idling when the car rocks. That's
makes your eyes water.
No, it's like there is an animal behind you. It's crazy. So that's from the Venom, and from the Jesko, just the gearbox. And actually, I have to say, when we started to develop the Tourbillon, I went to Christian and we were looking at using the gearbox for the Tourbillon. We have this openness. We did the battery for the Regera, and I'm happy also to use some stuff from Christian. Why not? So he knew from the beginning what I actually want to do with the Tourbillon. So it wasn't like we were hiding something from each other. So maybe one day we'll use the gearbox somewhere.
Would be cool.
Yeah.
So we had Bugatti Rimacs. One day we could have Bugatti Rimacs Koenigsegg.
At least in pieces. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and frankly for your bravery, letting each other go out in their cars and being good sports in all taking part. It's been phenomenally good fun and a real privilege, and I hope that everyone at home has enjoyed watching it as well, and hopefully we'll see you all again once more one day on this Top Gear
Bosses 3.
Yeah, the meeting of the great supercar minds.
We gotta get Gordon back, and we definitely want Horatio.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, see you soon.
Thank you.